Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutle Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatari. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd like to welcome everyone today for a discussion on reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Today we have the good fortune of having with us a Dhamvasi, a person who's residing in the holy Dham of Sri Dham Mayapur, His Grace Pancharatna Prabhu, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, who's been associated with this movement for many, many decades. He's involved in many projects, and today, extemporarily speaking, we got an opportunity to connect, and I said, Prabhu, could we speak? And he very kindly obliged at very short notice. So here we are. Pancharatna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Thank you, Prabhu, so much for accepting the offer to talk to us about reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Prabhu, do you recall the first time when you touched or saw Srila Prabhupada's books?
Not so, vibrantly in my mind. It's there because many people, when I speak to new audiences, especially devotee audiences, they ask, well, tell us about your first meeting with Srila Prabhupada. And I said, well, my first meeting with Srila Prabhupada was in his books. And because I say that because it really felt like a meeting. It felt like I'd met a person who knew God. That's the feeling that I got by reading Srila Prabhupada's books for the first time. This was in 1970. So I don't remember what book it was. I think it could have been, I really don't know. So
Do you remember the circumstances? Do you remember the circumstances?
Well, the circumstances was that I was living in Toronto, Canada, and I had developed my own sort of spiritual ideas about things. But there was a thread in my spirituality that was derived from Christianity, from Jesus, that told me that the purpose of life was to serve God. So that conclusion has sort of seeped into me. But the how to serve God and who God was, I had some concept of Jesus, but anyway, it was very, very vague but I had some experiences. This was the hippie days and with drugs and with this and with that. I had what I felt were spiritual experiences that I'd like to share with people that I thought were interested in. And I lived on the same road as the Toronto Temple at that time. I was staying in a boarding house on that same, and so I would pass this edifice of Hare Krishna and think, oh, these people look receptive to spirituality. So let me go and share my experiences. And of course, the opposite happened. I heard from them, and I received the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. I had chanted.
Quite an emphatic realization, if I may use the word realization, in the 60s and the 70s to come to a conclusion that one should be serving God instead of serving oneself and having a good time per se.
Well, it depends on your
what brought you to that point? I mean, rarely do you hear about people saying in those days or those years claiming that they wanted to serve God.
Well, first of all, you have to define God in this context, because my definition of God was somewhat impersonal, and so But it was really Jesus that, reading the Bible, I think that really brought that to me. And I was introduced to the Bible by some old hippie that claimed to be an incarnation of Jesus. so it's that kind of situation that I was in. So quite mixed up.
Like Srila Prabhupada said, it's an invaluable contribution for any religious system to even bring us to the point where one wants to surrender to God. All glories to that. Prabhu, you mentioned that the first time when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you had this experience that Srila Prabhupada was speaking to you directly.
I didn't know, not that he was speaking to me. The experience was that I was meeting a person in the sense of that I felt by reading his books that the person who wrote this knew God. So it wasn't like I felt like I was meeting him, although now I feel like I was meeting him. But at the time, it was more like receiving an impression of a person through their writing. And that impression was that here was a real servant of God who not only was serving God, but knew, actually, had firsthand experience, firsthand knowledge of God. And so
maybe very difficult to remember exactly what distinguished in your mind from the other things that you'd read or the other person you had come across claiming to be an incarnation. But could you recall some tidbits of what made that balance tilt for you to feel, hey, here is a person who's genuine and he knows God when you were reading whatever that book was?
As I remember it, it was his ability to describe God. So in other words, the Bible, for example, goes into very, very little in the way of actually describing God. And it's just generally the person, the being who creates, and it's very aloof, But here, Srila Prabhupada was speaking about God as a person with a name, with activity, and just that was the concept that just came to me and said, "Wow, this is right." So that was what I was.
Were you an avid reader?
No,
at that point in time?
No, I was not a reader at all.
I believe not many people were in those times and age.
Yeah, in my circles, I would say we read. I mean, but not avid. I mean, because we well, particularly for me, we were moving around. We were nomads. And so we didn't have a lot of, we'd carry one or two books that we were reading, but we wouldn't keep libraries of books and, just spend time with books like that. So
well, I can tell you one thing, growing up in the decade later, 80s and the 90s, I can share a few things that carrying one or two books would be considered an avid reader thereon. Because how much the reading habits have depleted, you probably know better than I do. But yes, I mean, that's nice. Prabhu, I want to ask you, you may not remember the book you were reading, but did you manage to read the whole book, or you sort of just got the inspiration, hit the temple?
I got the inspiration, but I moved into the temple in about 2 weeks later. So it was a very quick transference, and
that was quick. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. What was life like in the temple with respect to reading Srila Prabhupada's books? Its emphasis, did devotees want to read it? How did they feel inspired about it?
So I began my ashram life in Toronto. And we didn't have many books. We were reading the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam was being released chapter by chapter in these small little volumes. So we were reading that, and we were encouraged to, of course, read that, and we were distributing back to Godhead. So of course we were reading those too. But when I stayed in Toronto only for about a month or a little longer, and then I ended up in Buffalo, New York, because for various reasons. But Buffalo was really intent on reading. And we had 4 classes a day. We had a class on, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, and Ishopanishad. So we were reading all those books. And particularly Ishopanishad, we were attempting to memorize the slokas of Ishopanishad. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya came out. So we really were encouraged in Buffalo to really to read a lot. So
seems like you were reading practically all the books that were available every day.
Yes, whatever was available, we were reading. And then after
who were these pioneering leaders? I mean, what was the Sangha like there? Who were your friends? Who were the leaders who wanted to do this, were doing this day in, day out?
Well, the devotee who really spurred this on was Rupanuga to begin with. Rupanuga was the temple president. But then it was carried forward by Tejas Prabhu, who took over the president position when Rupanuga went to New York. Satyanarayan was one of my close friends there. Some other devotees who were in and out. Praladananda, I think, had just left from there. Govinda Maharaj came, he joined in Toronto. Muktabandya, a few others that you wouldn't know. Of course, Tejas and Madeira. Gunagrahi was there with his wife, so it was a nice group.
And was it voluntary that devotees wanted to read, or was it, hey, listen, if you want to stay in this premises, then you have to read?
It was the program. It was the program, and I never felt or sensed anyone felt any resistance to it. I thought it was just really, it was. I mean, what was the alternative? You're going to, polish the floors or, do some other work of some sort. So it was nice.
Which I presume you all were still doing. You weren't just reading books.
No, I mean, we also had to the temple together and do everything like that, cook, etc. And we went out every day on Sankirtan. We went out doing Harinam and distributing back to Godheads. Even in the sub-zero weather, we wear 3-4 layers of clothing and go out.
Yeah, the lovely weather of Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo.
Did you feel the nice relationship? Did you experience that nice relationship between having these 4 programs every day on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction, and going out on the streets and distributing books?
Nectar of Devotion.
Nectar of Devotion.
Yes, published.
And then distributing books on the street. How did that relationship felt of nourishing and distributing?
I can't really. I do have memories of the because we were a small temple. We were 15, 20 devotees. So, and it was men and women. And there wasn't that kind of, discrimination or whatever you would call it that arose in later years. It was much more of a camaraderie that between everyone. Not that there was, loose dealings, but it just was a feeling of more of a family relationship where men and women were equal. Reading together, talking together, performing the artis and the singing, ladies would sing kirtan and men would sing kirtan. You know, it was very equal sort of environment. And then going out to distribute was sort of the expression of our service and just what we, you know, we enjoyed doing it because it was fun. Except in the very, very cold weather, it was not so fun. But when spring came, then it was nice, you know, piling into the van and chanting and going out. And Tejas came up with this idea, which he called the Blitz. And the concept was that we would all pile into the van, and we'd all be very, you know, completely ready, and we'd just go to some populated part of town, and we would jump out, and we would immediately get right into kirtan and distributing books as if we had been there for hours. And we would do that for for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then the van would pull up, we would rush in, and then it would pull to another place in town. We'd rush out as if we were there for hours, and in this way try to give people the impression that we were everywhere. That was the concept.
Yeah, that must have been fun, I must say. That must have been fun.
And Tejas was a great cook. So I still have this extraordinary love for dal and chapatis. That was what and sometimes this banana date walnut bread that was just heavenly. So.
How long did this reading program of reading these 4 classes, reading together, how many years or how long did it continue?
Well, I left Buffalo after about 8 months and went to New York to serve, to help Rupanuga there. And we didn't have 4 classes there. We had morning and evening classes. But we did have more access to the books coming out. And so, basically the program, at least for me, my program was whatever book comes out, you just read it. And so I was just reading the books as they came out.
Some of us get goosebumps just thinking of that opportunity to be able to read as they're coming out, and you were a recipient of that. Must have been quite exhilarating. There must be quite a bit of enthusiasm amongst devotees. We've heard from many devotees how happy Srila Prabhupada used to be and would read himself. Srila Prabhupada would read his own books and he would be very happy. So which year is this when you moved to New York?
Krishna book came out when I was in Buffalo. Krishna book came out. We received Krishna book, and then that began the evening hearing Krishna book, someone reading it out loud, and everyone just gathered together and hearing Krishna book and having hot milk.
Is this something that Srila Prabhupada personally recommended, instituted, that devotees should do, or it was just a way devotees after Sankirtan would come back, and what better way to unwind and be together than to hear about Krishna and have hot milk?
Well, this is at the very end of the day. This is not, we would come back from Sankirtan or whatever service and then attend the evening arti and then have Bhagavad Gita class. And then this was after all of that. So It was, like 8:30 at night, just, so it was, and I really don't know. I don't know whose idea it was, where it came from, but
a brilliant idea indeed.
Sort of spread around.
Did it start from your center?
No, I don't think so.
Which year was this, Prabhu? Could you remind us of that?
This must have been 1970, early 71.
Early 71.
Or late 1970, actually.
So please tell us a little bit more from 71 to 77, while Srila Prabhupada was still present, about his books. Were there any mood swings amongst devotees in terms of reading books, cultural resets, emphasis, de-emphasis? What do you recall, Prabhu?
Good question. Frankly, I don't really. I mean, the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books went through many different developments, but the reading program, from my recollection, it was fairly steady. That the devotees were basically encouraged to read half an hour to an hour a day, and but I believe, see, I left New York in 1976 and came to Mayapur and began my service here in Mayapur. And at that point, my life really did change a lot, because I was, well, even before that, from 1975, when we bought the 55th Street building, I was responsible for finalizing the purchase, and I was very involved in that, and then moving the devotees into the building, so, and getting it ready. So my life from 1975 really did get get swept up into a management kind of life that like I think many managers in the movement have experienced, tends to pull you away from regular reading. And I have to say that was my experience, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the experience of many other devotees. That the pace of the movement, the pace of everything, the just accelerated, and so the in every sphere, in the Sankirtan sphere, in the management sphere, in the book production sphere, because for until I think it was 74, I'm not sure when the press moved, but the ISKCON press, the devotees who were putting the books together, they were in Brooklyn where I was, and then they moved to Los Angeles. But their life also was very high-paced. They had the advantage, those who were typesetters, they were constantly reading because they were reading what they were typing. And those who were laying out, they were also reading. But everyone in the press used to hear, because the tapes were going all the time of Srila Prabhupada going on. So that was there. But so I think that the pace picked up, and so at least I know my reading dropped off, and I suspect that happened with many devotees, that their reading program just started to drop off in sacrifice to the service.
Some call it the Hare Krishna explosion. And it's so good to hear the historical perspective, the 74, 75 perspective, and things, as you said, really went into the fifth gear. Prabhu, you described that there was less time to read. And this is something that a lot of devotees encounter even now, that either in the life cycle of a temple or a community, or one's preaching, one goes through this circle, maybe not at the same, with the same force that you all may have gone through, but everybody else goes through in different quantums. And the reading and connecting with Srila Prabhupada's instructions in terms of his Vani, hearing from him, reading his books thoroughly, goes down. Again, this is going back almost 4 decades. I would be teasing you if I ask you this question. Did you feel any perceptible difference either at that point in time or later on an urge, an internal urge that, I really want to now go back and just pick up the books, have the time to be able to connect and read for longer durations?
Well, to be honest, I've never been a really I've enjoyed reading Srila Prabhupada's books, but I've never been able to sit down and read for long periods of time. I either get tired, or get distracted. I have the same problem with sitting down and chanting Hare Krishna. I just have a very active mind that just thinks about service or problems or ideas or whatever. It's just I have that problem. So I can't say that I have an urge inside. Oh, I want to. If I could just sit down and just read. I never felt like. I mean, I kind of maybe aspired to feel like that. Felt like, well, maybe if I were, didn't have so many other services, maybe if I did just do that, then I would get into it, and then I'd really have a great time. But I can't say that I had that sort of urge within. I felt, on the other hand, though, I would feel neglectful. As I say, well, I should be. What am I doing? I'm Srila Prabhupada's disciple, and I'm supposed to read his books, and I should be doing this. And why am I not doing it? And those kind of thoughts were more common. And then I would think like that, and then I pick up a book and okay, I'm going to read now, right? And I would just and go in like that in little cycles, and it's been that I would say has been pretty much the story. It's leveled off where I found my ability to schedule in the reading has increased over, partly due to the work that you're doing, and the propaganda that you're making, and your own example has inspired me and others' example. I mean, I have been very, very impressed by Sheshika Prabhu, for example, and Keshav Bharati Maharaj, and how they have dove into the reading and hearing process. So different devotees have inspired me and say, hey, you've got. But I have a problem reading. I have a problem.
But you have a very active mind, and I know you also have a very fertile mind. I know the work that you've done.
Like full of cow dung is what it is.
And we know that according to the Vedic scriptures, cow dung is very potent.
We hope so.
Here's what I want to ask you, Prabhu. I know the work that you've done on chanting the holy name, with Chant Now and encouraging devotees. I know that you and your good wife, Atita Guna Mataji, when I requested you to travel to Kanhaiya Desh, you inspired devotees to sit down and chant, and you're adopting that in your life. What would you say if you had to draw some parallels? Because what I really appreciate and I would like to thank you about is your candidness and your honesty, to be able to say that, we all struggle to sit down and read. But now I want to ask you, what parallels can you draw? What suggestions can you give for those who struggle to sit down and read, of what they can do in their life in order to make it as pleasurable, as chanting the holy name has become for you over the years with the practice that you've adopted. So any parallels or some suggestions you may want to offer? And then I have so many other things I want to ask you.
Well, first of all, I think it's connected. I think chanting and reading are connected. To relish the holy names of Krishna is not a mechanical process. You can't mechanically, draw the taste of the holy name into your heart just by mouthing the words or doing something, physical. You need the mercy of the holy name. And the mercy of the holy name is connected naturally with the mercy of the parampara and the sadhus, the acharyas. And to connect with the acharyas, we have Srila Prabhupada's books. He himself, and as you know, and we all understand, that Srila Prabhupada, in writing his purports, he drew upon all the commentaries and so on from all the predecessor acharyas who wrote about these, and what to speak of Sukadev himself and Vyasadeva, etc. So we're connecting with these personalities whose devotion and whose experience, whose realizations can be contacted through their words. So, and that contact, that connection that you make, I believe, although it doesn't appear obvious, it's not like you can see, okay, I did this and then this happened. But it seems to me that when we take the time to read and to hear, in addition to reading, I also listen frequently to Srila Prabhupada's lectures and talks. That when we do that, then we are getting something that will then appear to us when we're chanting. So I think there's a connection between the two. And it is said, of course, that our goal is to chant without offenses. And to do that, we need to not neglect the orders of our acharyas. And I believe that Srila Prabhupada's, he's advised us. This one of my meditations, that's appeared, or not meditation, but thoughts that have come up recently, is to try to see, is there to distinguish between Srila Prabhupada's advice and orders. There's a story I heard. This came about when I heard a story from a god sister, Man Mohini, talking about an experience she had where she was a young devotee, married for just a few years. Her husband went off and ended up dead. he died. And she was like, now what? I'm a widow, but I have a child, and I really feel maybe I should get married again. And she went to Srila Prabhupada and was posing this question. And I think basically it was like, I want to know if I'm forbidden to marry again. And Srila Prabhupada said, I would never forbid you, but if you want my advice. So you can see there was a difference between orders. You must chant 16 rounds. You must follow the regulatory principles. And advice. But then she said, well, am I going to say no to the advice of my spiritual master? So it's that kind of fine line where I think that the business of reading Srila Prabhupada's books is a little different than the business of chanting 16 rounds a day, which we promised at initiation. He didn't ask us to promise that we would read his books, but it urged us and advised us and so on. So my feeling is that there's a connection, that when we take that advice and we associate in that way, that will bring us closer to Srila Prabhupada. And not just when we're reading, but throughout our other activities, including our chanting. So that's why I think there's a connection between the two.
So on that note, I want to ask you a question, which is, when we say that Srila Prabhupada is the preeminent Siksha Guru of ISKCON, in the context of Siksha, what would be our access to Siksha within the Parampara, with or without the books? Because, as you said, there's a fine line between advice and order. Where would you place the Siksha that we receive from Srila Prabhupada's books as an essential, or is it a good to have?
Well,
because we would not want to leave this question unanswered, right?
There are 5 angas of bhakti.
Yes.
And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is one of those, you could say, essentials, but not essential. In other words, like in all of the angas of bhakti, it's said that only just practicing one can give all perfection. If you do one fully, you can get all perfection. So I can't say that, there's that just like the blind, the devotee that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met, the illiterate Brahmin who couldn't even read, but still opened the book, and looked at it. So, I would say, like so many things, that they're important. They're the essential element of Krishna consciousness is to always remember Krishna and never forget. That's the only fundamental, essential thing. Now, to get to that, we need to practice. We need to practice various things that will bring us to that stage. Chanting is, we promise to chant, we promise to follow principles. And if we neglect to read Srila Prabhupada's books, then we're going to, it's like, a meal without, I don't know, water or something, something that you could get by, but you're not going to be healthy. So, you're going to eventually fall sick. You're eventually going to fall into, because for one reason is that we need to hear about Krishna.
Yes.
We need to not just chant his names. We need to hear about it. If we're going to develop love for Krishna, we have to hear about it. If we don't hear about Krishna, how will we get to know him? Yes, he may, by his causeless mercy, appear before us because we just, have so much love. But for most of us, at least I know for me, I need to know about Krishna. I need to try to understand who I am, try to understand where I am, try to understand what all this is. And that's what the books do. They reveal gradually who I am, what this body is, what these senses are, where I am, what this world is. All of this is revealed in the books, in the language of my mind.
Yes, definitely.
Because that's the thing, those who have such open hearts that they can hear Krishna and receive him in their hearts, because their hearts are so open and pure. But I don't have that. I've got this mind, and this mind is there, in front, and it's got to get through. Sometimes I can set the mind aside and somehow a little bit the heart, but to satisfy my mind, I have to hear about Krishna. I have to hear the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But then my problem is that I also end up debating internally what I hear and what I read to try to understand it, because I'm not simple enough to just.
But why should that be a problem? I mean, that's a good thing. Isn't that what all of us are supposed to do? Read, contemplate, introspect, understand, realize, apply. Why do you call that a problem?
Well, because it takes time and effort, and it ends up ultimately at the same place of just, it's the truth, and I accept it. Yes. So, and sometimes in the process of trying to understand and contemplate and go through, satisfy the mental questioning system that takes place in an analytical environment, you might even end up like having difficulty believing things that you don't understand. And then that's very risky, because if you it's one thing not to understand something and to say, okay, I don't understand that, but I still accept it. And then to go to the position, well, I don't understand it, and actually I think it's wrong. That's the process.
Yes. And I believe that's why it's mentioned, and you use this beautiful word, reveal. The scriptures are supposed to reveal everything within our heart. When one reads Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports, they must reveal, and they do reveal in the heart of the practitioners. Otherwise, belief, faith, blind faith, disbelief, distrust, all of that starts to emanate very quickly when the mind takes over and the revelation sort of goes down. Thank you, Prabhu, for that word of caution. Very important. I wanted to ask you, are you currently reading something from Srila Prabhupada these days?
My daily program is to continue, because I actually, like many devotees, I think, went through the first 9 cantos, the 10th canto, up and like we've done here in Mayapur, they stopped, at Srila Prabhupada's last purport, and then they went back to the first canto. And so I never read the 11th. I never read the 11th canto and 12th canto. I haven't read them, and I haven't read the rest of the 10th canto. So I said, I'm going to do this. So that's one. But then I also wanted to go back, like I have done in the class. And I would say, okay, I got to go back also and start again at the first canto. So I read the first canto. I'm way ahead of the class, so because I read, anyway. And then I read the 10th canto.
By my definition, you're still an avid reader.
I read, my reading program now is first canto.
Person who's carrying 2 books in their backpacks, coming from my generation, an avid reader.
So first canto, 10th canto, Bhagavad Gita, and then Chaitanya Charitamrita at night.
Chai.
And before going to bed, I read Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Wow.
In Anjali right now.
Wow. And Prabhu, you could be the person we could ask, why is it that devotees don't, I mean, I know one answer why they don't go beyond, but why not progress beyond and then read the other chapters after the 13th, 14th, 15th chapter of 10th canto and read further as published by the BBT in the classes in temples and for devotees? Is there a specific reason why in temples they go back?
Well, I suppose the reason is that they feel that they're trying to combine the hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam with the hearing of Srila Prabhupada. And so they want to give the devotees both the association of the Bhagavad as it is and the association of Srila Prabhupada in his purports. So in that way, they're able to, they combine these in the Bhagavatam class. That's my thing.
But is that a society-wide decision, or is it just locally temples can decide?
It be quite common. I don't. In fact, judging from my experience going around, I've seen, a number of temples that seem to just keep going back to the first canto. Even, they're like, something changes, and okay, we're going to just start back at the first canto. So that can also be it. They just never even get that far. Some change of management or something changes, and they're back at the first canto.
And Prabhu, what in terms of Chaitanya Charitamrita, you mentioned that you relish in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Would you like to share something with us from Chaitanya Charitamrita that's inspiring you these days and could inspire others who are going to view this and are looking at this now?
Well, my feeling is that reading Chaitanya Charitamrita is association with Sri Chaitanya. And that is very sweet. And particularly, I feel like, I do this just before going to sleep. And I feel like, what better way to, Krishna book, I was reading Krishna book. And then I thought, well, I want to read Chaitanya Charitamrita more. So let me read Chaitanya Charitamrita at night. Because I was reading Krishna book at night. And then I switched to Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I think it was just, that feeling of associating with Chaitanya and, of course, all his devotees, all the wonderful devotees, and just getting this sense of the relationships that they were having, and because you have this in Chaitanya Charitamrita particularly, Mahaprabhu's position as Krishna is very, very much brought forth. It's not like, who is he? No, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and particularly in Antya Lila, the devotees are really, this is Krishna. This is the Supreme Person, and there's this feeling of being so fortunate and yet the way Mahaprabhu behaves and it's all very extraordinary. So so I think that's, and it's easy reading too. It's not like, especially the Antya Lila is not a lot of heavy purports with lots of philosophy and so on. It's easy reading. So,
Prabhu, could you imagine an ISKCON without Srila Prabhupada's books?
No, you can't. That's certainly not possible. That's not possible. But I don't feel that we have yet to really engage with Srila Prabhupada's books too thoroughly. I think we're still, my personal opinion is that somebody made a comment the other day, saying how in the future there will be devotees who will write commentary on Srila Prabhupada's commentary. Now, there'll be Srila Prabhupada's work and his presentation is unique. I mean, he inserted, and we've heard from him that this is not him. This is Krishna. And that presents us with a very interesting challenge. I mean, you and I, we've all given classes, Bhagavatam classes, so on. And I'm sure I've had the experience after a class, I said, well, things came out that I didn't think about, they just kind of came to me. And they seem to be, that was a realization or something that sort of just came about. And you think, was that Krishna's giving me what does he say? It was at the tip of my tongue, that Yama Apekshana, that
I'm going down to the Ganga, to the boat.
Okay. My wife is going off or something. I'll see you in a bit then. So,
like a helping hand.
Yeah.
Krishna coming forward, giving a helping hand. Kids Club.
Well, he gives us knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness.
Yes.
And I'm forgetting that. He's making me forget it right now.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivisto matasmitim jnanam.
Yes. So how did this work with Srila Prabhupada? I mean, what was going on? And because there are some things that Srila Prabhupada says that are difficult to understand.
Revelations, as you said.
Revelations, but I mean, I haven't had there are things that I note and put aside and pray that the understanding will come sometime, but they don't and then you start thinking, well, maybe this was I'll just give you an example recently, where Srila Prabhupada mentions, he's talking about the yoga processes, and he talks about pratyahara as being detachment. And then he says, pranayam is the vehicle to do this. Or something. Pranayam? I couldn't understand it at all. How does pranayam become the vehicle? It just was totally bewildering. I just couldn't understand. And so these things happen.
Actually, Prabhupada explains it. Not maybe there, he explains it elsewhere. And I'll just take 15 seconds from what I recall and correct me if I'm wrong. He explains it that through pranayam, one is able to control the air, the 5 airs. And those airs are responsible also for our mental activity and our sensual activities, in all 10 of them together. And by doing so, then you're able to, take the poison off the snake's hood, kind of example.
That I can understand, but it was something else. It was some other very mysterious
Correct. And there are mysterious statements like that Srila Prabhupada has written in
it
the
wasn't
proposals.
what you're saying. It was something else. Anyhow, I'd have to look it up, but it was...
No problem. And while you're looking it up, another question, quick one. So we talked about, you mentioned that ISKCON, you don't see ISKCON without Srila Prabhupada's books, and you made a very, very valuable contribution by saying that we really have some way to go before we thoroughly, as institution, we engage with Srila Prabhupada's books.
Yeah.
Second question, on a more individual basis, do you see an individual sadhaka's life without Srila Prabhupada's books?
Not successful. Okay, you're saying Srila Prabhupada's books.
Yes.
But what we're really talking about is Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, translated by Srila Prabhupada with his purpose.
Yes.
So all Gaudiya Vaishnavas will all agree that the Bhagavatam is an essential element for any sadhaka. What is it? Chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, living in a holy place, worshiping the deity, these are essential.
Yes.
But what we're talking about is an additional layer. Because we're talking not just about associating with the Srimad Bhagavatam, but in addition to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we're talking about Srila Prabhupada. Now, is Srila Prabhupada an essential person for any sadhaka? I'm sure there are sadhakas in various Vaishnava lines and so on, for whom there are other personalities who are essential or most important for them. So it's a choice.
So let's narrow the context to International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yes, if you
with
want
the founder
to be
Acharya, with the founder Acharya as his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shilla Prabhupada.
If you want
that
follow
context.
In other words, we're followers. Yes. We're Rupanugas. First of all, we're all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we're all Rupanugas. Yes. So we're all following Rupa Goswami. But amongst the Rupanugas are the Prabhupada. In this case, I'm talking about A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
We're the Prabhupada Anugas. We're following him. So if we want to follow him, if we want to go in his path, if we want to serve him, if we want to connect with him, if we want him, we have to be with him, we have to accept him. And the way that we do that is the way he gave himself to us. He gave himself to us by writing. And that was his what he said, I will give myself to you forever.
Did you have a personal interaction where Srila Prabhupada said something to this effect? Any anecdote?
No, not personal. This is something that I've heard from others and recorded, etc. But I think it's also it's just logical also.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
How else can I hope to, if I ignore what he's written, what he's put his life in, because it's obvious that this took a lot of work. I mean, I write also. I write stuff for my service. And when I try to think down, and in the time that he had to produce the volumes of literature that he produced, and simultaneously to lead the society, it's like, and
literally impossible, right? I mean,
for me, it would be impossible. I mean, because
I think for most people,
of sleep, I can't.
How many more personalities would you know in history who've done it? I mean, I'm not a history buff, but I know a word or two about history. But
I mean, there are prolific writers. There are certainly prolific writers who have written prolifically.
No, we're not talking about writers. We're talking about doing things simultaneously, the way you beautifully described it. That's the point I'm also getting at.
You do it on 2 hours of sleep or 3 hours of sleep a day, and and to do
that's
it with
the proof.
The lucidity.
That's the proof. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's quite incredible. I mean, especially when you look at the last purports that Srila Prabhupada made on his deathbed, the lucidity of them, and it's extraordinary. And so obviously this was his gift, and therefore, if we want to follow him, if we want to go where he is and go where he's gone and become what he has, I mean, what he is, let's put it that way. There's a wonderful song that my godbrother Mangalananda composed for Srila Prabhupada, which goes, the refrain goes, "When I see his love, I know I've got a long, long way to go to
Beautiful.
feel the love that he is feeling." But there's nothing more, there's nothing better than to feel, to have that love. I mean, that's prema. Mm-hmm. And to get prema, he has it. I mean, there's no, that's the community. He's got this. Krishna say Tamar, Krishna dite par, Tomara sakatiyach.
Right. Amita Kangal, Krishna Krishna. Bhai Tava Pache Pache, walking in the footsteps of Shilla Prabhu.
Behind.
Yeah.
So that's, if you want to walk behind him, Srila Prabhupada. His books are the one, not the only. They're not the only element, but they are. I can't see how you can possibly attempt to walk behind and follow Srila Prabhupada without reading his books.
Beautiful. Prabhu, Pancharatna Prabhu, what should we do? What could we do? What must we do individually or as a society to take this forward? What advice do you have?
Well, I think we need to examine the various ways that devotees engage with Srila Prabhupada's books and be open to a variety. Because, like, just the other day, I was listening to Gopalbhatta Prabhu interviewing Vishaka. Mm-hmm. So he was interviewing Vishaka Prabhu, and he was asking about her reading of Srila Prabhupada's books. And she was talking about how what she likes to do is to pick a topic and then to try to research that through like Vanipedia, database or whatever, and read what Srila Prabhupada has written about that topic. Mm-hmm. and explore the topic from his various angles of vision, which is something that I enjoy doing every time I'm called to give a talk on the Bhagavatam. Then I pick out, I see what is Srila Prabhupada talking about there, and then I start exploring that. And I go, here to Banipedia is one of, I encourage everyone to support Banipedia and with contributions and to use it, and database. Both of those two are anyway, if you have the means to be a regular monthly donor, please do. Because they're such great services. And I feel like these are things that I use all the time. And it gives you that scope of finding things out and then discovering. So that discovery approach to Srila Prabhupada's books, I think is something that can be talked about more. I think there's also a big question. I have to say that in order to get in my 20-25 minutes of reading a day, which is that's it. It's not an hour. I don't spend an hour reading. 25 minutes in the morning. I do it during the Darshanarti time at the temple. And I have the excuse that it's COVID and it's pandemic, and so I get, it's too crowded there anyways, so I'm not going to go over. But still, it means that I have, I've cut out that time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that devotees, helping devotees to see, okay, where do you adjust? How do you do it? How do you fit it in? Because that's, what do you need to do in order to fit it in? That needs to be talked about, I think, a lot more. I think generally speaking, devotees all feel, yes, I have to read. I mean, what's the question about? Yeah, of course.
Correct.
But it's not like, there is a difference. If you go a day without chanting your 16 rounds, you feel it, you feel what happened. I didn't spend, because you really feel it. If you go for a day without reading, at least in me, the effect is not the same. If you go for a week without reading, then it starts to, you feel like, wait a minute, I've got to do this. But so it's not as, the hunger for reading, at least I find it, is not as great as the hunger that I have. I've got to chant. So I think that needs to be talked about too.
Thank you, Prabhu. 3 important points. You mentioned that we should be able to find out and help devotees find time, create the hunger in their hearts to be able to connect to Srila Prabhupada's books on a regular basis. And if we're able to do this, then it will help devotees to move forward. And perhaps, like you mentioned, suggest to them approaches by which they become more interested, like topical approach. Take a topic, research from different angles of vision. All 3 very, very good ideas.
One more.
Yes.
And I don't know how this will happen, but for me, and maybe others, you have a guru who is present that you could go and ask questions. Mm-hmm. But even then, you may find that he's too busy, or not too busy, but for whatever reason, it's too deep, too involved of a question. We have Srila Prabhupada, and we ask questions. I ask questions all the time. But other than waiting for Srila Prabhupada to answer my questions, which he does. Most of the time, he will answer my questions in his books. And it generally happens like that. I'll just, okay. I've been, the question's there, and then I start reading, there's the answer. But sometimes it isn't. And I don't feel that there's adequate forums for devotees to discuss, really, question, to go into the questioning and analyzing and understanding of difficult things. And there's some real, especially there's already some big difficult parts of Srila Prabhupada's books that are very difficult. The women's position is the number one in my list. That is a difficult topic. It's a difficult topic, and Srila Prabhupada deals with it this way here, this way there, this way. It's a big topic too, and I feel that there needs to be more forums, or any forum. I don't know any forum that you could go to, a devotee could go to and engage in a civil dialogue on issues like this, and hear different perspectives, etc. So I think that's something that needs to be explored, because Srila Prabhupada's books are filled with Krishna, but they're also filled with him, and in many, his personal, I should say, experience of the world, and his language, his way of using language. Like, one of my questions I want to ask, Srila Prabhupada, and it appears that the Vedas, they love to use what I would call hyperbole. You do this, you will immediately achieve full Krishna consciousness. You do this in a moment, and only there is this language that is like it's not shades of gray. Mm-hmm. It's bright colors of, just here it is. And it's art, in my view, it's a kind of an artwork where this is the artistry of someone who speaks and presents in bold, vibrant color. But it's not easy to.
That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, just like people on the outside can't understand how chanting a mantra can change consciousness until they do it. A lot of this, as the scriptures, Bhagavatam describes, remains accessible only to the degree that our perception opens up. And otherwise, I remember my first days at the university, when I first came across devotees many years ago and looked at the first page of Bhagavatam, and you talk about women's position, this and that. And I looked at that and I said, what is that? A person lying in the ocean, and there are bubbles coming out of it. In one of the bubbles, another person's lying, and out of that, there's a flower, which I couldn't even connect that it was actually lotus, but it's golden in color, and there's somebody else sitting at the center of it with 4 heads. And it described he's the chief engineer of this world. And I was studying science, right? So, yes. So you can understand how I felt about relating to something like that. I can definitely tell you it seemed very, very difficult. So that's just the picture, what to say of the text. So
yeah, over a period of time. I think that there's light at the end of that tunnel, And it's just
Yes,
a
yes.
matter of helping people to navigate that tunnel. I think that that's one thing that I feel could be a impetus for
And I
devotees.
think you point us to the right direction. You point us to the right direction. If we have forums, if we have places where dialogues are held by personalities like yourself who are realized, sadhus who are realized,
I'll
who
just
can
be asking
then
questions.
well, the Bhagavatam say, Munyo sadhu prishtoham bhavad birloka mangalam. Just by doing so, you bring greatest welfare to
It often
everyone.
happens like that. When you formulate your question, you can get to, and that's known that a question properly put provides its answer.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's a.
But that's a very valuable input, Prabhu, that we must have more of these forums. It will allow devotees to shed some of the inhibitions. If they have some reservations, come forward and state it before they reach to the stage which you earlier pointed out, which can be disastrous. If they say, you know what, I don't understand this thing, and probably it's not true.
Yeah.
So on this path of truth, moving from the lack of reality to reality, from falsity to truth, I thank you a lot, Pancharatna Prabhu, for your time today.
Last one that I think you is the reading groups. That also is another major thing. But getting that to organizing that with people that are like each other.
Yes.
How to help that happen. Like Vishaka was telling on her little interview about a reading group she belongs to that's been going for, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And she mentioned some of the people that are in her group. I said, yeah, this is a group that can connect with each other. So helping to organize that, I think, would be another, or that's something that we all should try to see what we can do to
absolutely
stimulate
in
that
fact,
sort of
leaders like yourself, Prabhu, who are leading the community in Mayapur, community sevaks, etc. It will be our humble prayer and request.
Yeah, I attend. The pandemic has sort of thrown things off, because that was where I was working before all of this kind of went.
It would be so nice, imagine, in different languages, different sectors, in Bangla, in Hindi, in English, in different languages. Devotees
we were working on it. We were developing it, and then anyway,
coming together, reading Prabhupada's books. Even if I'll tell you something we're doing in our community in Kanhaiya Desh, every day, devotees are reading every day now for 9 months. And when I was reading, we went quite ahead. We went all the way till the 10th canto in a period of 3.5, 4 months. But again, we restarted. But you'll be happy to know, Prabhu, every day they're reading, even though they're working. They're not full-time devotees. They're not residing in the Holy Dham. They reside and work wherever they are. They started from the very first word of Srimad Bhagavatam, and now we are on the 3rd canto, 16th chapter, 47th verse. We've not skipped a verse. We've not skipped a translation, not a purport. In a period of what? About 4.5, 5 months, 4.5 months. This is a community where devotees had not gone beyond, first canto individually or second canto individually. Now together it's happening. It's magical, actually. It's magical. And many of them are now hooked on. Many of them are hooked on. They want to read. So we are looking to Sridham Mayapur. The whole world is looking to Sridham Mayapur for this to happen. This to happen. Prabhu, thank you so much for your time. I'm very, very grateful and looking forward to speaking to you again sometime soon. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and his transcendental books. Thank you, Pancharatna Prabhu.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.